Wake up with the sunrise, meditate to clear my mind. Thank you for this breath, I'm ready to be surprised. Don't know where I'm going.
Hello and welcome to this healing session. I'm so excited to have you all. I am your fearless guide and hostess, Rachel W. Robinson, victim rights attorney, as many of you know. Aside from that, I'm also a gardener. Of course, I am a poet, a contributing author to an international best-selling book, and also getting into the automotive industry with my little Toro rentals. And so maybe I'll do a tutorial on that for all of you, as far as if you want to get an investment vehicle that pays you instead of you having to pay for it. And so in that vein, we have the perfect guest today. His name is George Verbrugge. He is a financial advisor and investment advisor representative with Transamerica Financial Advisors. He has over 20 years of financial industry experience. He's worked with major companies such as Merrill Lynch, Northwestern Mutual, Oppenheimer Funds, and of course, Transamerica. His experience includes education, customer service, back office support, and wholesaling. And he decided to start working with clients about 5 years ago when he saw the need for financial literacy for all of us. See, most companies focus on the top 1% of Americans for their clients, leaving the rest of us to learn on our own or even just flounder financially. He enjoys working with us who are in need of the most help, and he enjoys teaching financial concepts that are not taught in most schools. He has been married for 28 years to his college sweetheart, Michelle. He is proud of his two daughters, Caitlin, who is a social worker in Texas, and Lindsay, who is finishing her junior year of college. George, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to our healing session.
Thank you for having me, Rachel.
Did I miss anything?
No, I think that was pretty good.
Awesome. Well, let's just jump right in. I'd like to know more about your personal background and what got you into helping everyone with their finances.
Well, it's kind of a funny story. I grew up, I had a great journalism teacher in high school, my freshman year, and I enjoyed writing for the school paper when I was growing up in Aurora, Colorado. I went off to college with the intent of becoming a journalist. And then when I was in college, to make ends meet, I actually worked for a newspaper. I went to school in Durango at Fort Lewis College, and I worked for the Durango Herald, mostly in the mailroom, but I would actually work from time to time when they needed additional staff writers to fill in. So I kind of had a paradigm shift about midway through college when I met someone who had just graduated from grad school from University of Arizona, and she had started working as a staff writer. And the amount of money that she was making was pretty low. And Durango is a college town, so it's a little more expensive to live in. And I kind of I knew that would be kind of a challenge, and I didn't want to go to grad school to continue my education. So I actually decided to get into sales after college.
What were you doing in sales first? And how did that lead to straight up just doing financial advising?
Yeah. So I actually had a college friend who started the lacrosse program, which I still play lacrosse, but he started the program at Fort Lewis. And I think it was my sophomore year, he gave me a call and said, "Hey, do you have a summer job?" And at that point, I had just gotten home. And so we ended up working for some financial advisors, helping them to schedule appointments and do some managed money seminars. So after I graduated, I actually was still in touch with those financial advisors and did an internship with them afterwards. I kind of bounced around a little bit. I did sales of other things like merchant services, which is credit card processing for small businesses, working with banks. I also tried to get into some sales in some other areas, but I ended up going back and working for Merrill Lynch after I got married, and then working for First Data outside sales, and then wanted to get back into the financial side of things. So I ended up working at Oppenheimer Funds for about 5 years, and then got into wholesaling with Transamerica on that side of things.
And what was the appeal for you versus working with the top 1%, these other financial agencies do? What makes you feel more fulfilled working with, common American Joe, I guess, as far as really helping us figure out our financial futures and protect our wealth?
Great. Well, one of the things that I really enjoyed after I did, once I was married, I actually spent some time with Northwestern Mutual, and that was before I went to work for Merrill Lynch. I really enjoyed helping people, but at that point, I was about 25 years old. Most of my friends were 25 years old. I had a few friends that were married. Very few friends had any children at that time. And so they didn't really see the need for life insurance. And like most Americans, a lot of people don't really see the need for life insurance until it's too late. So at that point, I ended up going and working for Merrill Lynch. When I was working for Transamerica, I had heard about the Transamerica Financial Advisors platform because I worked with a lot of products and services. And as a wholesaler, my job was to actually talk to financial advisors like myself now and really educate them on how the products and services would fit for their clients. So there are a lot of products out there and a lot of different nuances for each of them. And that's what I would teach the financial advisors. I got to a point where I wanted to build a business for myself, and I saw a need, like I said, for educating people on financial literacy, which is really something, as you mentioned, but it's something that really isn't taught in school. Most Americans aren't required to go through a financial education class and learn about personal finance. And I think the last time I saw, there's about 15 states that actually require any financial education. And so the rest of us will learn it from going to college to be finance majors or working with family and learning from family members about how money works. And really, that still doesn't really help. So what I really liked about Transamerica was, one, we are truly an independent financial advisor firm. So we work with over 300 different insurance and investment companies, which is great. We don't have to pigeonhole our clients. But our mission is really great. It's no family left behind. And so if the big financial advisor firms, including Merrill Lynch and JP Morgan Chase, are looking at finding clients who have 500,000 or more to invest today, most Americans don't have that. So that's where my company provides that service and helps them in that area as well.
Invaluable and amazing. You mentioned like learning from family members. I was really lucky. My dad's an actuary. And so growing up, he's always been good with numbers and with investing and financing. And as a child, he would take me and my sister to two places every weekend. First, it would be the library, and then it would be the bank. And we would be learning about mutual funds that we have in there. He'd be giving us our allowance and asking us, how do you want to divide this up? You have your savings, you have your, I don't think we had debit cards then, but the withdrawal account. And then, of course, at the library, we would have to pick, we could get 2 fiction books, 1 nonfiction book, and had to finish the nonfiction book before we could read or get a new fiction book. But anyway, so really important to have family that can instill that. But I do remember not really learning a lot of that in school. I think in my home economics class in middle school, we did a little bit of like balancing a checkbook along with baking cakes and paying for groceries, but it was nothing really comprehensive in regards to really building and protecting our own wealth for ourselves. So very interesting, very inspiring that you're doing that. Most of my clients, well, all of my clients really, they're all professional women, college educated or are working after high school, at least high school educated. Many of them have children, and many of them, all of them really, have left relationships where they are now figuring out how to navigate the world on one income when before it was 2, right? And most of them have custody of their children as well. And so now they're battling with childcare and not only having to balance their checkbooks in a different way, but there's always the risk when we're leaving abusive situations that something could happen to them. And so, one of the things that I'm really excited for you to talk about is protecting their assets, their wealth, particularly even having some wealth building through life insurance so that they know that their children would be okay if something happens to them. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. And one of the things that we offer, and I offer as well, is free consultation. So part of that is really kind of finding out where the client is today, what their goals and dreams are for the future, and then building a plan to help them get there. And we really focus on 4 components. One is saving, protecting, investing, and then providing a plan for retirement. And I think really those are kind of the four pillars that we really work with. Most people don't realize that their biggest asset is their ability to earn. And especially, I think it's important for single moms, especially in a new situation like that, to make sure that their children are protected. So if something happens to the mother in that situation, having something that can protect them and provide the same goals and provide the same success that they would have if they weren't able to work is really kind of the focus. So what we try to do is we take a look at each situation and we look at what their investment goals are, but we also look to provide protection against something happening. And that can be anything from providing life insurance, disability insurance, but really making sure that I've seen customers and clients have heart attacks and survive, have strokes and survive, be diagnosed with cancer. And these are all things that can really change the trajectory of their future financial paths. So we work with multiple companies that provide solutions to help protect those clients in those situations where they can actually access, say, a death benefit on a life insurance policy, even if they're not terminally ill, if they have a heart attack or stroke and survive, if they're diagnosed with cancer, they have ways that they can access the death benefit for the life insurance policies while they're still alive. So that can prevent them from going into debt because of health costs, which is really important. There is a story. I worked with someone in Texas who they used one of the products that I sell. And they had a client who was 34 years old. He had $1 million life insurance policy. And 4 months later, he had a heart attack. And the company that I was using actually paid the client $300,000 of just wrote him a check for $300,000, and he still has $500,000 of death benefit. So it allowed him to take care of all of his medical bills and other expenses while he wasn't able to go back to work until he was able to get better. So we have a lot of solutions like that.
Amazing. So what would you suggest if I'm going to paint a scenario and then I'd like to get your thoughts on how someone would get started in investing. So say I have a mother. She has 2 children. One is 9, one is 3. She's just left abusive situation. She's now figuring life out on her own, college educated, works as an executive assistant somewhere, making good money, maybe 120 grand a year. And she has those 2 small children. But because of the cost of the divorce, for example, because of now having to move to different homes and take care of the children by herself, she is essentially living paycheck to paycheck and likely has a bit of credit card debt as well. How would you suggest that person get started in investing? Like, how small of an amount can she put together for a month and still have a good amount of money by the time she's retiring?
That's a great question. So really kind of the key there is we want to make sure that she has adequate protection. So what we do is we go through the process and we find out what her monthly budget allows for that kind of situation. And then we kind of build a plan around that. And so there are different types of insurance and we help people with that. But really kind of the key is we want to make sure that we try to get the most clients out of debt as soon as possible. We also think that having an emergency fund is very important, and that can really depend on how much they set aside. In most cases, it's about 3 to 6 months of expenses. And really the key there is if we're able to help people get out of debt, and then something happens like the transmission in their car breaks down, or they have to replace their furnace in their house, we don't want them to have to get out of debt and then turn right around and fall back into debt. So what we talk about is building an emergency fund that allows them to kind of bridge that gap. And again, that's kind of 3 to 6 months of monthly expenses, which is great. Then we also look at how much money they have left over in that scenario. Again, we like to talk to people about protecting those assets. So it really depends. You could have $120,000 a year salary, but how much money is left at the end of the month? So one of the things we talk about is spending habits and ways to kind of put more money aside if that is needed. And then we look at protecting the mother in that situation, and then looking at other things like with her job, how much money is she able to put away in her 401k, and what their company matches. Because sometimes what we come across is people are putting a lot of money aside into their 401k, and that becomes their second largest asset, maybe beyond their house. So we want to make sure that they have enough money to not only provide future for their retirement savings, but we also look at other things. And one of the strategies that we use there's three ways that people are taxed, and three types of investments. One is a tax now, which they all have benefits and they all have disadvantages. And the tax now are things like their checking account, their savings account, mutual funds, stocks and bonds that are outside of retirement accounts. The big benefit there is that those clients have access to that money, so it's very liquid. But the downside is that money is taxed every year. So they can have a good year and then they could be taxed. And so a portion of that is taken out, for taxes. So it doesn't allow them to compound their wealth as quickly. The second bucket that we look at is more on the retirement side. So that's the tax later. The big benefit there is, in some cases, clients will get a contribution made to their 401ks or IRAs by their employer, which is great. The downside is that when they're ready to retire, they may not know what taxes are going to look like. So taxes could be really high. So if they need $100,000 a year, they may have to take out more than $100,000 a year to pay those taxes. And so that can really dwindle their retirement assets down. The other thing there is that if they take money out prior to 59 and a half, there could be some tax consequences there as well. But the benefit is that money grows tax deferred. They are not taxed on it, so it allows them to compound that money. The last bucket is the tax favored. And those are things like cash value life insurance and Roth IRAs and municipal bonds and municipal bond funds. The big benefit there is that money grows tax free. The downside is that not everyone can qualify. And in the case of Roth IRAs, you can only put in a certain amount each year, and that changes. Currently, it's $6,500 a year. So if someone is looking to put away more than that, they may need other investment options. But kind of the goal is that when they retire, they have access to that bucket without taxes. So our goal is to really allow them to have more control over how much they pay in taxes each year. So if taxes are high because the president and that Congress at that time says that taxes should be high, they don't want to take as much from the second bucket because they could be taxed a lot on that and run out of money faster. So having the third bucket allows them to really lower their taxes. If taxes are low, it's okay to take from that bucket because taxes are low. So it really gives them more control if we set up the plan and put money in each of those three buckets.
So I really want to make this bite size as well for for that same woman. Let's look at that scenario and be like, what if she could only put in $400 a month? Like, what if that's what she has left over for investments? How much could she have in 5-10 years based on some of the investment strategies that you were talking about? Because I think by then, at least one of her children would be ready for college, so what could she have saved up by then?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things I like is that we actually use tools that we can show most people in that scenario. So there's a couple things that I help people with. And one is getting better rates of return. So kind of stepping back is that we teach concepts like the rule of 72. Most people haven't heard of that rule, but really the rule of 72 allows people to kind of figure out how long it takes for their money to double. So we look at that. So you take 72, divide it by the rate of return. So if most people are putting money in the bank, so in your example, someone's putting money, $400 a month, the rule of 72, you use 72 years or 72 divided by the rate of return. So if most people are putting $400 away in the bank and getting, say, 1%, which is probably higher than the national average today, it would take them 72 years to double their money. What we try to do is find investments that are going to be better. So let's say we can find an investment that is 10%. that will take about 7.2 years to double their investments. It also helps that in your example, they're putting away $400 a month, which is great because that allows them, when the markets are down, then if they're putting in $400 a month, those investments are actually buying more shares. And they, in the long run, the cost per share is cheaper. So it actually benefits the client. And so our goal is really to try to get them a better rate of return, but also to find investments that may be tax efficient. So it allows them the opportunity to grow that money even faster and allow them to have a better nest egg for things like retirement or education for the kiddos.
All right. Well, I know you mentioned that step one is always really assessing the financial situation, looking at it, being honest with ourselves of what's there, and starting to figure out where we have room to participate in these different programs that you're talking about. And I know that one of the tools that you like to use with your clients to get them started is a budget sheet that you have, although I prefer to call it a personal financial cash flow. But your budget sheet, would you like to share your screen and go through that with us now?
Sure. I do like the idea of calling it the cash flow, and this really kind of breaks it down. Depending on, some people have more than one job, and it allows them to see what their pre-tax income is, what their income is, their investments. It kind of allows them to kind of put all of those into different categories. And are you able to see that?
Yes, we can see it. I see it.
Yeah. So it allows them to input that information into the different boxes, and then they can kind of figure out how much they're spending with their living expenses, meals, things like that, cars, entertainment, hobbies, and it has charities if people like to give to the church or their college or other financial or other institutions, which is great. It even has a place down here for pet expenses, because kids are not the only things that are expensive. A lot of times pets can be expensive too. And it gives them a way to kind of budget that. And I like to bring up a story. I met a person one time who was a single professional, and he was doing pretty well. He actually owned a mortgage company, and he didn't really do a budget. And just by putting it out on paper, he realized that he was spending about $4,000 a month on going out to eat. And that included an occasional breakfast burrito, but also lunch and going out to dinner multiple times during the week. So having something like this allows them to see what their cash flow is and really kind of see in areas where they may be able to actually find some areas where they can actually save some additional money. And I read a book recently, and the guy called it the latte factor, that most people don't realize that how much they spend on coffee at Starbucks or other coffee establishments on a monthly basis. So something like this kind of just puts it out in front of them, and then they can kind of make a decision on, if they want to save more, they can kind of see where that cash is flowing out and where they may be able to, put that going forward.
Well, this is very exciting to me. I have my own personal cash flow chart, and I have the cash flow chart for my business. I also have to keep track of the car rentals, the Turo, although that app has some really great tracking resources, but I can't always just be logging into my cell phone every time I want to see it. It's hard to see everything side by side. And I think having something like this would be amazing, to have all the different streams side by side right there, and just give that bird's eye view of the whole picture. I mean, it's really exciting. This is phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that. And is this something that you go over with your clients in the initial consultation, or is that more of a conversation, and then this is where we're getting into kind of giving them hope? They've retained you, you're giving them this homework, and then you go from there?
Yeah. So in our first conversation, we don't really delve into what all the monthly expenses are. And our first consultation is anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. Some people have some more questions, and because of that, it may take a little longer. But what we try to do is really kind of find out how much, back to your cash flow, how much cash is coming in, and flowing in each month, and then how much their expenses are going out. And the reason for that is that allows us to kind of figure out a kind of a ballpark number for their monthly budget. Our second consultation, and everything is free, and I don't get paid unless I'm able to help a family. So even if we meet again, I know unlike a lawyer where you're on retainer, that may be a situation. With us, what we do is we only get paid if we help a family. So that gives us an opportunity to kind of put a proposal together. So step one is to meet with them, gather some information, and then do some research on that and find out how we might be able to help them build a plan to get to where they want to get when they're ready to retire, be it retirement or even kids' education, things like that. Our second meeting is really come back with a proposal. And I typically look at 2 or 3 companies for each a financial goal to show them and really educate them. So we go over different types of insurance. I educate them on that, different types of investments. And then I really kind of try to provide the knowledge for them. And I don't like to be salesy. So I may give them a few options and then let them decide. If they have questions, then I answer those questions. I typically at that point give them the budget spreadsheet, cash flow spreadsheet. So it allows them to kind of look into that and allow them to see where they may be able to, put more money aside. And sometimes that's a great idea because you may have that example that you used earlier where someone may have $400 a month. If their kids are starting to get a little older and college education is becoming more expensive, they may need to find other ways to make more money or save more money. So they could use your Toro example. They could do something along those lines, or they could also find other areas in their budget where maybe they cut back on the number of coffees that they drink in a week to allow them to free up more money to pay for that child's education.
Absolutely. Can I see when you put a number in, is this an interactive sheet? It already has the formulas in. Like if we put $3,000 under job one pre-tax income, kind of what populates on its own? Because this can look a little overwhelming.
Yeah, this is a spreadsheet that really kind of doesn't have too many, it doesn't have the formulas built into it. And I'm sorry, I was more of an English major. So that's probably why it wasn't
But there it is. There we go. We're seeing it okay. There. It populated over there. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's something that some people, they like it. Some, I think the reason it's wise to call it a cash flow sheet is because most people don't like a budget or the idea of having, it's going to constrain me. I like to have money and go out when I want versus, I don't have enough money to go out, but my friends are going out anyway, so I have to do that. So I think one of the key, another educational part that we like to provide for people is we come across a lot of clients who they basically, their idea is to make their money. And then at the end of the month, they look to see if there's any money left over. And if there is, then they decide to invest that. And all we're trying to do, and it's kind of a cliche in the industry, but pay yourself first. So the idea is that if we look at your example of the $400 a month, make that part of the budget. And then if there's money at the end of the month, go ahead and do whatever you want with it, because then all of your financial goals are being put into motion, and it allows them to have those kind of goals set. And then they're paying for those first. And then down the road, if there's extra, they can put that into other investment goals, or they can go and have a good time.
Thank you so much for showing us that, George. A question I have for you is about, we're talking about families, and just as my clients themselves are trying to, evolve and learn what it's like to be out here on their own and developing and protecting their own wealth, what are some lessons that they can pass on to their children? If they know their kids aren't going to get that education, what would you recommend that they start teaching their children now to be prepared as they grow up?
Well, one of the things that we do provide is that we have access to a book called How Money Works. And the first time I saw this, I will admit, because of my financial background and some of the companies I worked with, I thought it was a little silly because there are cartoon characters in it. And This book was written by a couple of our financial advisors in our company. But the idea behind it is that it was written for someone who's at about a 6th or 7th grade level. The idea is that it gives them a real base financial education. So as it was written for someone who's about a 6th or a 7th grade reading level, it gives them an opportunity to, most kids that age can read through this book in about 2 hours. So most adults can read through it in about an hour to an hour and a half. And it gives a lot of examples. So it talks about the rule of 72, and it talks about the benefit of compounding. And that's important because people who don't know those basic concepts can be hurt by them. And I kind of mentioned the rule of 72 earlier. So if you take 72 and divide it by, say, 10%, it takes 7.2 years for you to double your money. The same can be said if you have a credit card, say with $5,000 on it, and all you're doing is paying the the monthly minimums. If you're paying 15% on that, it only takes a few years for that amount to really double. And so those are things that I think are really important to pass on to our kids. The benefits of saving, the benefits of time, because the longer time frame you have, better opportunity you have to reach those financial goals, especially the long-term goals. The benefits of looking at taxable versus tax deferred, and then the benefits of really putting a plan in place and trying to stick to that as close as possible. And then the benefits of having someone like yourself and as a lawyer who can also help them with things. I know that's probably not your specialty, but allowing them the opportunity to pass that money on generationally. Because a lot of people don't realize, and you hear stories. Prince comes to mind. I'm from that generation. When he passed away at an early age, his family, the money was tied up in probate, and he didn't really have a plan to tell the courts where that money was to go. So there was a lot of infighting, and the government got a lot of money. The state government in Minnesota got a lot of money that could have gone to the family, because planning is something that is very, very important. So those are little things that I think it's important to pass on to your children, and little things like you and your father taking you to the library, things like that are important to really kind of build that base.
Amazing. Where can we find that book?
It's available. So if anyone meets with me, I need to order some more, but as soon as if we have that meeting, that's a free consultation, and the book is free as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's very generous. All right. So then where do we find you? Where would we schedule this consultation?
Well, you feel free to give me a call. I've got a nice little form that kind of, think of it almost as a menu. The companies I work with, like I mentioned, it shows a lot of the different products that we offer, but they can give me a call on my cell phone to schedule a free consultation anytime.
And do you have another number that you don't mind being out maybe more publicly, that the cell phone is okay in your email?
Yeah, my phone number is 303-619-7502.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your contact information. I'm very, very excited about who you're going to help. My clients know how to reach you. I know how to reach you, because I think I might have some questions myself as I'm rebuilding my own wealth and finding ways to protect it. So I highly recommend, and thank you so much, George, for being here today.
Well, thank you. It was great to spend time with you today.
Journey through the valley of the shadow, while I stand tall in the light with me, there is no sense to battle, because I come in peace. I came to set myself free, and if you open your eyes, you will see my divinity.